Hello again, I'm Robert Fithen. In this video, I'm going to be talking about 50 albums, but I will not be talking about the way the music sounds, or the album artwork, or how good of a pressing it is, or anything like that. What I will be talking about are my favorite album titles of all time. Again, this has nothing to do with the music on the album. These are strictly about my favorite album titles. In fact, I will admit right now, 2 of the albums on this list I've never even heard, so I will explain that coming up as well. But I just want to get started right away because there are a lot here. Favorite album title. First of all, one of the favorite band names of all time is the 13th Floor Elevators. And I found out this is actually called the Psychedelic Sounds of the 13th Floor Elevators. I didn't realize that. I thought it was just the 13th Floor Elevators. But yeah, it's the Psychedelic Sounds of the 13th Floor Elevators. And word on the street is this was the first time that psychedelic was ever used on an album title. Another early one with that word, Blues Magoos and Psychedelic Lollipop. I know what you're talking about. I know what kind of lollipop that is. It's a psychedelic lollipop. Oh yeah. Moonflower from Santana is a great album name. Great album artwork here as well with the gatefold that opens up there, and pretty much the same thing on the inside. A little lazy, but you know, you get both pictures there in case you've got like ringwear like I do. You can have a nice gatefold inner there with the same photo. But a moonflower, that's just a great visual, and the album music on the album really complements that. I wonder what kind of flowers are on the moon. That's just a really cool name. Always loved this, the German group Eman Duell Zwei with Phallus Day. Phallus Day, the penis of the gods, or the penis, God's penis, basically. Yeah, I mean, you gotta love an album title like that. A great live album title. This is my second favorite live album title of all time. Motorhead and No Sleep Till Hammersmith. You know, a lot of live albums are like, we're rocking you live, or we're live from the Fillmore, or stomping at the Savoy, or, you know, all absolutely live in concert, you know, whatever. This one really focuses on just the will of the band to continue and continue even though they haven't slept. That's out on the road. You know, you get no sleep. You're just a rock band that just keeps going and going and going. No Sleep Till Hammersmith. And Hammersmith apparently wasn't even on that tour, so they basically got no sleep. I love the Queen album title called Jazz because, well, you know, if somebody asks me what my favorite jazz album is, I can always say, oh, it's the Queen one from 1978 with bicycle races on it. But yeah, Queen and Jazz. I understand that Ry Cooder also had an album called Jazz that came out in 1978. Not as familiar with that album as I am this one, and the great cover art on here, as well as the title, Into the Purple Valley. Don't you just want to go right into a purple valley? The music on here is more folksy and talking about FDR in Trinidad and how can you keep moving when you're, I don't know, you're squatting or whatever. But yeah, you're migrating or something, but Into the Purple Valley is a great album title. Here's another one that I just actually picked up on Record Store Day. The Rain Parade and Emergency Third Rail Power Trip. I love it when they just a series of words, seemingly. Emergency Third Rail Power Trip from the Rain Parade. Great late psychedelic album from the 80s. It's proven that it can still be done in the 80s. And speaking of psychedelic, Nectar and A Tab in the Ocean. I'm not sure how potent that would be since it's in the whole ocean, but you can imagine the fish when there's a tab in the ocean from Nectar. Psychedelic Days, a lot of these are from the same era, if you might have noticed. The Rolling Stones, not my favorite Rolling Stones album. I wouldn't even put this in my top 10 of Rolling Stones album, but definitely my favorite Rolling Stones album title, Their Satanic Majesty's Request, with the 3D cover there. Their Satanic Majesty's Request. Definitely my favorite Rolling Stones album title. Sticky Fingers is okay, but you kind of have to have the album visual to go with it. The album title really doesn't stand on its own. You have to have the front to understand that, oh, Sticky Fingers. This one is the same way. The Who with Who's Next. You have to have the album cover image to understand the whole Who's Next thing and why that's hilarious. I actually talked about this album in a different video and paid tribute to what they've done here myself. And yes, it was authentic. I just didn't pour water. That's real. Just so everyone, I know you were wondering that. Yeah, it was real. The Flying Burrito Brothers, The Gilded Palace of Sin, their debut album. Took me a while to get into this album, the music on it anyway, but I've always loved this album title. It was in that book that I showed a few times that I got when I was like 7 years old with all the different album covers in it. I always thought that was a fun title, The Gilded Palace of Sin, even before I knew what the word gilded mean. Of course, this classic album title, Never Mind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols. I remember growing up, and I got this when I was a teenager, as most people did, and this was my first like sort of punk rock album. I had no idea what bollocks were. But you're not supposed to mind, you're supposed to never mind those, so I guess it really didn't matter what bollocks were. But I did not know what those were at the time. Yes, I know what they are now. Stop commenting what bollocks are. I know what, I'm not a teenager anymore. I've learned since then what they are. But I've always loved the sort of never mind the bollocks, which has made people in England, I'm sure, go, oh, at the time. And then like, here's the Sex Pistols, like you're at an old like 60s TV show, like, here's the Beatles, here's the Sex Pistols. So it's got the kind of a dual feeling going on there. And of course the kidnapping note paper, cover there. And yeah, it's just really cool. Secret Treaties from Blue Oyster Cult. Now these guys would be in the lead for cool song titles, but they've got some nice album titles too, like Club Ninja, Agents of Fortune was always a favorite, but this one is at the top here. Secret Treaties from Blue Oyster Cult. How about when you don't have these big long names like Talking with the Taxman About Poetry from Billy Bragg? That's a cool album title too. Or Dracula's Music Cabinet from the Vampires of Dartmoor. Cool band name, cool album title. But what about people who can pull off a cool album title with just one word? There's a few of those as well. Michael Jackson Thriller, I always thought was an excellent album title. Not only is it probably my favorite song at this point on the album, but Thriller is, I always love that word, thriller. I remember back in the TV Guide when I was a kid looking, any scary movie, they wouldn't be called a horror or suspense. Those would all, or mystery movies, they would always be called thrillers. I always loved the word thriller. There was an old British TV show called Thriller that used to come on, it only came on for like a few months, but I fell in love with it. I had to get the whole DVD set. This was the 70s version, by the way, not the old Boris Karloff version for people that are watching in the UK. But yeah, I love that show and always loved the word thriller. The Beatles' Revolver, I think, is my favorite Beatles album title. I love the way that all physical media music had always been on something revolving for the longest time. Like, obviously a record is revolving. I'm sure that's what this is referring to here. Either that or a gun. But yeah, revolver. When you're watching like reel-to-reel tapes, revolving around. Cassette tapes had the hubs revolving around, and one, the take-up reel and the supply reel, and they're revolving. Even 8-track tapes, the revolving in that was hidden. But, it was still going on the inside. And then CDs came along, and they were revolving too at a very much faster rate, a variable rate as well. But everything was revolving until the age of like files and streaming, when it was just a thing going across the screen. I think that really kind of took away a lot from music and owning music and whatever, when it was just a thing going across the screen, because it's no longer turning. So I always thought Revolver was a great album title. One word title from the Grateful Dead, Aoxomoxoa. Is that right? Aoxomoxoa. See, you're into the Grateful Dead when you can just whip out that album title just like that. Aoxomoxoa from the Grateful Dead. A great album title from these guys. A useful album title. Not only a great album title, but very useful from Lynyrd Skynyrd on their debut. Pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd. I shudder to think of how DJs and people all over the world would have said this band's name had it not been for calling their debut Pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd. One of the most brilliant album titles, because I think it really helped them out. People still don't know how to spell it. You've learned that from seeing their name spelled all kinds of ways. Leonardo Skynyrd, and all this kind of, no, you need 4 Ys. You need 4 Ys or you're not spelling it right, and it is, of course, Lynyrd Skynyrd. Come on, iconic. This is not a list of the most iconic album titles. These are just my favorites, but you can't not use, this is in a really, I'm going to pull this out of here, because that's a really, getting really kind of scuffed there, that sleeve. But yeah, Dark Side of the Moon with the posters coming out. Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd, album title, iconic, totally. They have great album titles. Of course, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, Saucer Full of Secrets, those are great too. But this is the one, including the iconic album cover, Dark Side of the Moon from Pink Floyd. Canned Heat teamed up with John Hooker to come out with Hooker in Heat. Not Hooker and Heat, Hooker in Heat. Like the letter N, like rock and roll. Hooker in Heat. Which, I don't know if they meant that to be a play on words, like there's a hooker in heat. I don't think hookers get in heat, though. I think it's strictly about the profit. It's all about the money. Hookers are rarely in heat. You're being naive if you think that hooker's in heat. But yeah, Hooker in Heat from Canned Heat. Now, of course, can't do a video with David Bowie's shirt on and not mention some David Bowie album titles. He's got some good ones, Aladdin Sane and all those. But my favorite is The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Now, normally you would see an album title like that and it would just be a bunch of nonsense, but I love the fact that this is literally, the album is a concept album about the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and his band, the Spiders from Mars. So not only is it a great album title and a series of words, but it actually makes complete sense in context of the album. So yeah, great David Bowie album, obviously, and also great David Bowie album title. Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. Yes, I know it's just the song title and they're kind of cheating there, but I've always loved, especially all the alliteration there. Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap from AC/DC. I know this is a later, this is like really a 1981 album because the original came out in 1976 in Australia with a completely different cover and all of that. But I like this album cover. I always have, people don't like this, but I love the album cover of that. But yeah, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. Another silly one from the Jay Giles Band, You're Getting Even While I'm Getting Odd. Just kind of a ridiculous play on words. I mean, the album is somewhat forgettable, but nice album title. You're Getting Even While I'm Getting Odd. I used to see this when I was a kid in the Columbia House book and think, oh, I'll have that album someday. And now I do. Another one that I'm not too familiar with, I've just always loved the album title, Genesis and the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. This is not my favorite Genesis album. If you've seen, like, I think it's what, 3 or 4 videos back, I say what my favorite Genesis album is. I'm definitely not repeating that. But this one, I just really like the album title, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Love the album title of this too. The music does not live up to it, but Ramatam and In April Came the Dawning of the Red Suns. This sounds like this thing is going to be mysterious. This is going to be like, man, I got to get an album called In April Came the Dawning of the Red Suns. It doesn't live up to the, you don't have to run out and get this. Frank Sinatra. I bet you never, I don't think I've ever shown a Frank Sinatra album before. I'm not the biggest Frank Sinatra fan or anything, but I've always loved the title, No One Cares. And look at that, that's a man who thinks that no one cares right there. I think this would have worked better if it wasn't like Frank Sinatra, because I'm pretty sure people care about Frank Sinatra. But here he's trying to put on this act as if no one cares. I mean, and he has songs on here like, I'll Never Smile Again. Guess what? No one cares. That's got to be a sad feeling. You're never going to smile again. Sad enough, right? And then the fact that no one cares. A cottage is for sale, and no one cares. I don't stand a ghost of a chance with you. Guess what? No one cares. We're just friends. I'd like to be more. Yeah, no one cares. Not even the person you want to be more than friends with. I can't get started. You know why? Because no one cares. Frank Sinatra, no one cares. Blues, man. Love blues albums. They don't always have the best titles. Some of them are just kind of, whatever. Born Under a Bad Sign. I should have shown that. That's a great album title. B.B. King has a good one, too. Live in Cook County Jail. Now, nothing says blues like you're in Cook County Jail. B.B. King, live, Cook County Jail. Starts off with the sheriff being booed by the audience, by the way. Live in Cook County Jail. Waylon Jennings, Honky Tonk Heroes. Been there, done that. Honky Tonk Heroes, again, with the double alliteration there. Honky Tonk, I always love that word. Honky Tonk and Juke Joint, I think, are tied for my favorite places to be. But yeah, Honky Tonk Heroes, great album too, great. Thanks to Travis, by the way, who runs the Collinsville Record Show, for hooking me up with this incredible, very clean, excellent copy of this hard-to-find album. Totally appreciate that. And one of my favorite albums, as well as one of my favorite album titles. Let's stick it to the man with Jefferson Airplane. Why are they sticking it to the man in an album called After Bathing at Baxter's? Because it goes right up against society at the time, proving right here, yes, hippies bathe. Hippies take baths. It's right there in the title. Jefferson Airplane, After Bathing at Baxter's. Sticking it to the man. This is kind of a weird one. Warren Zevon, Bad Luck Streak in Dancing School. I just think that's a great title. I don't even know why. Some of these I don't know why. I just love the title. Bad Luck Streak in Dancing School from Warren Zevon. Hell Bent for Leather. This was called Killing Machine in the UK. In the US, it's Hell Bent for Leather. I always love that phrase. Hell Bent for Leather! That was a phrase that Judas Priest did not come up with that, but look at the ring wear on that. Wow. Judas Priest did not come up with that phrase either. That was actually, Frankie Lane says that in the song Rawhide. Through hell, wind, and weather, hell bent for leather, wishing my gal was by my side. Rawhide! Anyway, yeah, Hell Bent for Leather from Judas Priest. Quarter Moon in a 10-Cent Town from Emmylou Harris. Not a great album cover, great album title. It comes from actually the first song on here called Easy From Now On, which is my favorite Emmylou Harris song. So you'd have to credit the two writers of that song for coming up with the actual album title, Quarter Moon in a 10-Cent Town. On the Threshold of a Dream. Moody Blues have a lot of great album covers and titles, and this is one of them, On the Threshold of a Dream. Not only a great album title, but paying nod to their record label. Don't think I didn't notice that, Moody Blues. Here's another one from Bruce Hayek, The Electric Lucifer. Some of the album titles don't live up, the album itself doesn't live up to the title. This one does. When you get an album called The Electric Lucifer, you've got certain expectations, and yes, this is just as bizarre as the album title suggests. One of the first album titles I ever heard that I really liked back when I was a kid, again, I think I saw this in the Columbia House book, Malice in Wonderland from Nazareth. Malice in Wonderland. There's actually two versions of this cover. One of them, it says, it has a little thing here, and it says Nazareth, Malice in Wonderland. This one, it's written across the top. Malice in Wonderland from Nazareth. It's not their best album of all time, certainly. It does have the song Holiday on it. But yeah, Malice in Wonderland. I think it's from 1981. And let's switch over to CDs for a few here. I hope to get this on vinyl, the exact version I want. It's my grail. I've mentioned this before in other videos about how awesome this album is, but it's also got a great album title. The band is Kaleidoscope, the UK Kaleidoscope, and Tangerine Dream. I'm not sure if this is where the band Tangerine Dream got their name. I'm assuming it is, but yeah. I hope to have this, the version I want, on vinyl very, very soon. Hopefully that will be happening really soon. Fingers crossed. Okay, also Funkadelic, Standing on the Verge of Getting It On. My favorite Funkadelic song, but also a great album title as well. Skip over the intro, though, the talking intro about the be your dog and tree. Yeah, you just skip over that part. But yeah, other than that, my favorite Funkadelic song, and I've always loved the concept of just standing on the verge of getting it on. White Zombie, Le Sexorcisto Devil Music Volume 1. What more can you say? That's a great album title. I love the Dead Letter Office from REM. That's a great name for an album of throwaway songs and B-sides and ones that were not released on REM albums. I think that's a great way to name that, that collection, a Dead Letter Office. OK Computer from Radiohead. I mean, not only a great album and a great album title, but they really kind of were on the forefront of, they predicted the future here. Everybody going around saying, well, I won't say it because I might set off one of your devices, but you know what I'm talking about with OK, Google, and OK, SIRE. I don't want to say it. I don't want to make lights start blinking in your house or something, but they were on the front of, OK Computer, they pretty much predicted all of that. And also, we got to go to the 8 tracks for a great punk rock album title, The Dead Boys, Young, Loud, and Snotty. You don't hear that anymore. No little kids get called snotty anymore. That was the thing when I was growing up, though. He's snotty. That little snot. Nobody gets called that anymore. But the Dead Boys, apparently, they sealed it back in the 70s. So they crystallized that word, just like all snot should be. And, called their album Young, Loud, and Snotty. So, yeah, those are some of my favorite. I could have pulled out more albums. I'm going to run down these other ones really quickly. A lot of heavy metal, hard rock, extreme bands want to have nice extreme album titles that really are shocking or violent or gory or whatever. I think this one is pretty harsh, though. This is my favorite. From the band Mogwai, Hardcore Will Never Die, But You Will. That's pretty harsh. The Flaming Lips have all kinds of great album titles. Oh my God, it's the Flaming Lips, and you know, Transmission from the Satellite Heart. My favorite's probably, I think it's their debut album, is In a Priest-Driven Ambulance. The Flaming Lips in a Priest-Driven Ambulance. Fiona Apple's second album is a great album title just because of the length of the album title. And also this allowed me to make a dick joke in an earlier video too. So props to Fiona Apple for that. When the pawn hits the conflicts, he thinks like a king, and I will just leave it up to you to read the rest. I'm not saying all that. You can read the rest of that long-ass album title from Fiona Apple. Turn of a Friendly Card from the Alan Parsons Project. I just always, it's another one of those, I'm not like Bad Luck in Dancing School. I don't know why I like that album title, I just always have. Turn of a Friendly Card. Here's another one that really sets up the atmosphere. Tom Waits' Nighthawks at the Diner. Perfect album title for what that album is, and you know, I've been the Nighthawk at the Diner a few times. Really around this area, it's the Waffle House. You ever gone out and the Waffle House is right there in almost the same parking lot as the bar? That's a great place for a Waffle House. Been there, done that. With a jukebox that actually played skipping, including back skipping 45s. You haven't lived till you've been in a Waffle House at 2:30 in the morning with a back skipping 45 playing, and it just skips and skips and plays and plays and plays until somebody comes out from behind the counter and hits the jukebox. That's how they fixed it. Hit the jukebox, the record, like, you know, a minute later in the song. Yeah. Nighthawks at the Diner. At the Mountains of Madness from the Australian group Black Feather. At the Mountains of Madness. Just love the way that sounds as well. You know, I was thinking about including Freak Out from the Mothers of Invention. I always like the phrase freak out, especially when it's used that early in 1966, their debut album. But they got bested a year later by the band The Unfolding with their album title, How to Blow Your Mind and Have a Freak Out Party. How to Blow Your Mind and Have a Freak Out Party. That's a great album title. That's you don't get much better than that. I've got 3 left. Going back to a couple I've actually never heard. I don't have a lot of hip-hop albums. I'm not the biggest hip-hop fan, if you've probably not noticed that. But there's this guy named Kendrick Lamar, who I showed like Thriller and Revolver and, you know, my favorite one-word album titles. This one, though, is probably my favorite out of all those. Damn. That's the album title. Damn. With a period. I don't know very much about this album at all. I don't think I've ever actually heard it. I used to see it. It used to be everywhere, though. If you were like in Walmart or Target especially, they would have a bunch of copies of it. Record stores would have it up on, you know, like promoting it on an end cap or something. This was obviously a huge album. I just always loved that title. Damn. With a period. So it's not only a word, it's a sentence. And that's a great sentence, by the way. Just, that says it all. Damn. One of my favorite album titles of all time. I didn't rank these, by the way. These are in no particular order. But I would put this in my top 10, even though it's from Ted Nugent. I'm not the biggest fan of Ted Nugent as a person. And before you go, wait a minute, that's Sweaty Teddy. He's the Motor City Madman. Woo! Calm down. I've worked with Ted Nugent. You ever worked with Ted Nugent? You probably wouldn't be a very, very big fan of Ted Nugent if you ever had to work with Ted Nugent. But I will give him credit. He's got one of the best album titles of all time. My favorite, I said before that Motorhead's No Sleep Till Hammersmith was my second favorite live album title. My favorite live album title of all time, and I'm sure it's too clever for Ted Nugent to have come up with. I don't know who came up with this, but Intensities in 10 Cities. That's clever. Intensities in 10 Cities. My favorite live album cover. Not my favorite live album. I think I've heard it once. This thing came out in 1981. Doesn't even have Cat Scratch Fever. Doesn't have Free For All, doesn't have Great White Buffalo, doesn't have Wang Dang, Sweet Poon Tang, doesn't have Journey to the Center of the Mind, doesn't even have Wango Tango, for God's sakes. Got a bunch of songs no one cares about. One of them's called I Am a Predator. Okay. Land of a Thousand Dances, he does a version of that. But the title, though. Again, I'm not talking about album quality. I'm talking strictly about album titles here. It doesn't get much better than Intensities in 10 Cities. And I'm leaving you with one more. The album title that inspired this entire video when I mentioned it a couple of videos back and said, you know what, I got to do a video of my favorite album titles of all time. This is the one that inspired it. In Your Face. Now, by itself, doesn't sound like much of an album title, In Your Face. Okay. The band is Kingdom Come. So it's Kingdom Come in Your Face. That's a great album title. I've never heard the album. I don't want to hear the album because there's no way the album could ever live up to that title. Kingdom Come in Your Face. I wish it had a better cover than just showing a speaker like that, but I guess they couldn't push it too far. They were pushing it anyway by calling their album Kingdom Come in Your Face. That's, wow, I love that album title. I make no apologies. I'm Robert Fitton. Thank you so much for watching. And what are some of your favorite album titles? Because I could have probably done 25 more. I decided to stop at 50. But let me know some of your favorite album titles in the comments section. Let me know the ones that you absolutely agree with and be like, yeah, that's the best right there, like Kingdom Come in Your Face. And hopefully I will talk to you again soon. Thank you so much for watching.